All right. Welcome to Dyad Reading with Dr. Lisa Brown. Just a reminder of who we are as Reading League Utah. We are the regional chapter, like the state chapter for Utah for the Reading League. The Reading League has chapters across the country. There's Reading League National, and then most of the states, I think they're almost up to all 50 states, have their own chapter. And it really is around building awareness, understanding, and knowledge of evidence-aligned reading instruction to support educators and making sure all students can achieve at high levels in their reading. And our membership includes teachers, coaches, higher education faculty, pre-service teachers, administrators, interventionists, specialists, all kinds of folks that are engaging in our webinars and that either attend live or will get the recording after. I am Jennifer Thronson. I just get to do the introductions and welcome the host and do any follow-up with you all. In terms of Jacqueline, if you want to just put in the chat box where you're coming from tonight and what your role is, that's always fun for us as the hosts and presenter of knowing who's in our live audience. And then obviously we'll attend all the people online. And I'm going to introduce Lisa while we get that accomplished. So Dr. Lisa Brown, we went to doc school together. So that's my connection with Lisa, is an educator and a leader in teacher education preparation with experience across K-12, higher education, and the state level. We also worked together at USBE for a little bit. She currently serves as the director of graduate teacher certification programs at Sam Houston University in Huntsville, Texas. Her background includes work as a district literacy coach in Bastrop, Texas, an adjunct professor and early literacy course designer at Weber State, educator preparation program director and curriculum coordinator at Austin Community College. She's had lots of diverse backgrounds, as you can see. She's also contributed at the state level through her work at the Utah State Office of Education and the Utah Education Network. Dr. Brown began her career teaching third and sixth grades in Davis County School District here in Utah. She holds a PhD in curriculum instruction with a focus in literacy from Utah State and a master's in curriculum instruction. You just didn't get enough that first round, Lisa, from Weber State University. And so we are excited to have her here and to teach you about one of the best high yielding practices that I think we can do. I often joke, somewhat joking and somewhat serious, it's kind of malpractice that once you know this strategy to not do it because it takes so little time and has such a big return on your investment. So Lisa, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can share yours and you can bring the joy of dyad reading to others.
Thank you, Jennifer. It is so great to be here today. I'm really excited about sharing this with all of you. It's been a while since I've had a chance to do this, and it's one of my favorite things to do. Dyad reading was something that I worked on in my doctoral program at Utah State. We did some research. I was teaching third grade at the time. We did some research with our entire grade level. We had one classroom that didn't want to participate, so luckily we had a control group. That worked out well for us, but unfortunately not great for those students who didn't get the opportunity to try dyad reading. So in my own class, when I was doing dyad reading, I had at the beginning of the year about a third of my students who were on grade level, which is what we expect from the NAEP scores and the way it's always seemed to have gone. So I had about a third that were on grade level. By the end of the year, doing dyad reading all year, I had one student that was not on grade level at the end of that year. And that little sweetheart was really close. I think she could have made it if she was a better tester. But to see those kids make such great growth, they're now graduating from high school this year. It's been 2017 since we did this, but it's such a wonderful practice that it takes some time to set it up. But once you get it set up, 15 minutes a day, it's a small investment in your students' literacy and their ability to tackle complex texts. So dyad reading is a peer-assisted reading program, not really program, but an experience where you have a lead reader and an assisted reader. They sit side by side, they use one text, they follow along together, they read aloud in unison. The power of this method is it gives students that supported access to difficult texts in a whole class setting. It's a great scaffolding experience for your students. You can use it not just during the 15 minutes a day, but you can use it during social studies when you're doing some reading or English language arts. Anytime that you're reading a challenging text and you don't have all your students on grade level, which I don't know that you'll ever have in the beginning of the year, hopefully by the end of the year, that you can give that scaffolded support to every student in the classroom in a whole class setting. They support each other. Dyad reading gives students that multisensory experience in reading. As they read along, they hear the words as they're saying it aloud and hearing their partners say the words. They're seeing those words in text, which improves their sight recognition of the words over time, and they're saying those words. So they see, say, and hear the words that they hear in language at all times. So it builds their sight recognition of these words. They'll say, oh, I've heard that word before, and now I know what it looks like. So it builds their vocabulary and just their ability to recognize words in text. We know that we need to challenge our students. We're told over and over again, our students need to be challenged. They need to be in complex texts. But how do you support those students in doing so? This is a great way to support those students in a whole class setting. And with that challenge, they build that strength in reading, that muscle. They build their reading skills, and they are able to engage with complex texts. So paired oral reading provides struggling readers with that supported access. They get greater quantities of text because they're able to just whip through some of these more complex texts with that great support. They focus on prosody and meaning rather than just struggling to decode the words. Prosody, we know, helps comprehension because it gives students ideas to hang on to, sentences, phrases, rather than just those individual words. And so it helps them to focus on the meaning of the text. So it facilitates their comprehension. It also gets them into books that they couldn't get into on their own. With that support, they're able to read more of the complex nonfiction texts, some of those texts that their friends are reading that they have not been able to access. It just gives them those positive experiences engaging with complex and difficult texts. So the theoretical framework behind this is Vygotsky. What a child can do in cooperation today, he can do alone tomorrow. So we want to give them that opportunity to have that scaffolded support, build their strength, help them to become independent, and really develop their ability to engage with this complex text and those more difficult tasks. Dyad reading has a 50-year history. It's actually a little bit more now because it's 50 years in 2017, so we're on to 60 years. It started in around 1969. Heckelman did a lot of research with it. It was called initially a neurological impress method. There was a lot of other research that came much later. It kind of died off with Heckelman, came back again in the late 80s, and then research again around 2000. BYU did a couple studies with it. That's where I first found it and was interested in it, looking at the work of Morgan, Wilcox, and Eldridge. And then we did our study in 2017. We did this with third graders, and again, we did it with a full grade level of students in Davis County. So this was September of 2017 in our whole grade level. As you see, we had about a third of our students that were on grade level, as we expect. We had more than half of our students that were basic or below basic, and then we had just below proficient. By April of that year, this is what it looked like. We were down to less than a third of basic and below basic, less than a fourth. We had some below proficient, but we had 2/3 of our students that were on proficient or advanced. So we went from 35% basic to 33% advanced. So we really had some good growth in April. We had a lot of success. We had our literacy coach came down and said, what are you all doing down here in third grade? Something is happening, and I want to know what it is. And so we talked to her about this Dyad reading study. She was very excited about it, started taking it to other classes and other grade levels. We started doing a lot in our school with older students, pairing with younger students to do a similar kind of thing. But it really just took off in our school. And then Jennifer and I did a lot of work in Utah, spreading it around Utah when we worked at USBE. And they had a great literacy group there when I was at USBE. Had the opportunity to share this all over the state and saw a lot of great results throughout the state. So it's got a lot of research behind it. It's got a lot of strength behind it. There's a lot of evidence that this is a very high efficacy process that really helps our students to grow and make achievements. So this is a graph that shows you what we found in our study. We were wondering, what is the best level of challenge for our students to read at? So we had texts that were 2 grade levels above the lower reader's current reading level, 3 grade levels above, and 4 grade levels above. And as you can see, when we got down to the 95th session, which was the end of the study, they were all neck and neck. At the beginning, the 4 grade levels above really had a lot of growth, and then they kind of tapered off a little bit. As they increased their Lexile levels, we also increased the difficulty level, and that may be why it tapered off a bit. So you might want to say, well, we want to challenge them really well at the beginning, get them a real good boost, and then, just make sure that we're challenging them. But there is not a big difference between 2, 3, and 4 grade levels above difficulty. The big thing is that you want to have it age appropriate text. Sometimes as you get in those higher Lexile levels, they're not as age appropriate. So you want to make sure that you're always matching your students' interests, what's appropriate for them at the grade level.
And Lisa,
So
if you will strike real clarity on this, people often think dyad reading is just partner reading, like two kids reading together, same text, but it's the difficulty that really is the key factor in making this work. So like that 2 years above, that 3 years above, 4 years above, it looks like all of them have impact. And there's like, we get pretty good results even at 2 years only above. But it needs to be above. Like you didn't put the grade level text, like there's not an instructional level group. There was the control group that just did silent reading, if I remember right. But we just harp a little bit on the need for it to be more difficult for the below level reader in the pair, because that's the part that when I go out and people aren't getting results, it's because they haven't done the challenge part. They've done the pairing, but not the challenge.
yeah, so if you're not putting in them challenging texts, you're not going to get the growth because they're not being stretched. Anytime that we stretch our students, challenge them, I mean, there's so much evidence behind getting students into difficult text, challenging text, to grow them and stretch them, build their vocabulary, build their ability to engage with that kind of text. So if you're not challenging them, you're not going to see the growth. And as we said, 2 grade levels above is still very challenging for those lower level readers because they're reading, if they're on a 2nd grade level, they're reading on a 4th grade level. It is a challenge for them. And you can stretch them up to the 4 levels above, and they're going to be even more challenged. And that's where you see this higher growth at the beginning, is this higher level of challenge. You're just building those reading muscles and helping them to really stretch themselves and grow. And it builds their vocabulary so much because they're in more complex vocabulary as well. So in our study, after 95 sessions, our struggling readers made an average Lexile growth of 242, almost 243 Lexile levels. The combined Dyad groups, which was the struggling readers and their partners, the strong readers combined, they made an average growth of 213, almost 214 Lexile levels. And a lot of people say, well, the stronger reader, are they not challenged? Are we holding them back? But when you're teaching someone else something and you're trying to articulate well, you're trying to use prosody, you're trying to really support another person, it's a challenge for you. And so we found that our strong readers made greater growth than the control group as well. Their stronger readers did not make very much growth, whereas our stronger readers made huge growth. So it even challenges those strong readers that are serving as a lead reader. Their growth was significantly more than the control group. So don't worry about your stronger readers. Anytime you're asking a student to support another student, to tutor them, to teach something, if you have to teach something, it's going to be a challenge for you. You're going to have to engage, you're going to have to think, you're going to have to listen, you're going to have to really strategize on how to do that. And that's what we found with our lead readers, is their growth was improved as well, that it didn't hurt them, it actually benefited them. Their prosody got better, and they just really became stronger readers as well. So don't worry about those stronger readers, they're going to grow as well. That's why we promote also working with older students with younger students, because anytime an older student is tutoring and supporting a younger student, they're challenging, they're looking at text in a different way than if they were just reading silently on their own. So keep that in mind. Our control group made an average of 85 Lexile point gains from at the 95th session. And so you can see there was just a huge difference in those Dyad reading groups as compared to the control groups. And again, I was sorry that those control kids didn't get to engage in Dyad reading because they made the average yearly growth, but they didn't excel. So how do you set up for Dyad reading success? It's all about the structure when you start it, when you get it organized, and it takes a little bit of time to organize it, but it's worth the investment in your time. So you want to organize your reading materials. If you have a classroom library, I know in Texas we've got all these new lists, reading lists that you can only use certain books. I don't know what's happening in Utah with that. Texas has become a little bit of a challenge for classroom libraries. You have to have your books on the approved list. But even on those approved list books, that gives you Lexile levels a lot of times when you have those lists. Organize your reading materials. If you've got a great classroom library, get those books Lexiled. You can use different online sites to level your books. Probably much easier now with AI. You can probably level your books a lot more quickly than we did back when we did the study. Make sure you have a good variety of books in your library. I used to go to used bookstores, and if once I told them I was a teacher, they would just pretty much give me books for a quarter each. Build your library, get as many high interest books as you can. That really helps your students engage, gives them some very interesting books. Look for a lot of the nonfiction high interest books. I had a lot of books on horses and ocean life and dinosaurs, and I just had all kinds of different subjects. And I found that especially my boys really wanted to read those nonfiction books, and they really got excited about it. So have a good mix of nonfiction, good fiction books, prepare those libraries, get them all Lexiled. And you can use the volunteers to come in and help you Lexile your library and get it done quickly. Make sure you have plenty of choice with some structure. Establish a good record-keeping system. Again, in the age of AI now, it's going to be easier to set up those record-keeping systems. I just type into AI, please create me a spreadsheet, have this, this, and this, and it whips it out for me. Then when you set up your partners, you assess your students. I don't know what kind of, can you share what kind of Lexile kind of assessment things you were using now in Utah, Jennifer?
Yeah, Acadians will give them a Lexile, so it produces one for them.
Good. So you have good access to that,
Yep.
and you can track their progress that way. So once you've assessed your students, if you're familiar with strategic partnering, I'm sure most of you are. Being teachers, you probably use this quite a bit. So we'll talk about strategic partnering in a little more detail here in a minute. Determine text difficulty levels. Look at where your lower level readers are to decide what Lexile level is 2 to 3 levels above, or even 4. And then as you're partnering, change partners during the year to give students exposure to different students, give them different reciprocity. During your classroom implementation, we'll talk about preparing and training your students, the Dyad reading guidelines and rules that you want to set up, how you're going to schedule it into your day, and then we'll talk about some tips for success. And then just as you're doing Dyad reading, maintain that level of progress, level of challenge by monitoring their progress frequently. They're going to grow and you want to keep stretching them. So as they're growing, you want to keep moving those Lexile levels up. So here was my classroom library back in the old days. And here you can see I wrote on the spines of the books, the Lexile levels, and then I just had my shelves, you know, the different Lexile levels, 600, 700, 800. And then I would let the kids sometimes choose. But sometimes this is an overwhelming choice, but you know, a guided help is really helpful. So use the different online tools to level your books. You can find supplemental reading materials from core reading programs. I know when I was teaching in Utah, we had a whole core reading library that had like leveled books, and I would pull from those quite frequently. So I'd have one of those core reading library books in their basket as well. You might want to check in the back rooms of your school, in the back rooms of your library. I found all kinds of leveled reading materials at my school that nobody was using anymore. So I pulled those out. So look and find where you can get different texts. You can also print things off. But again, a colorful book with great pictures is a lot more engaging than a printed book. And then setting up how you're going to organize your materials. I use these $1 bins, had their names written on there, and then you could erase those and change them out. But I had the students' names on there, and I had at least 3 books in their bins that they could choose from. So I had some fiction, some nonfiction. I tried to tailor it to their interest. This volcano book was one of our absolute favorites. Everybody loved that book. I had space books, a lot of good fiction books, some of those graphic novels. Graphic novels are a great book for the students really seem to like. I also had a notepad so that if they got stuck on a word that they didn't know, they could write it down and then they could ask me later. We want to continue to build that vocabulary. So they each had their book bin. They knew where their stuff was. They knew who their partner was. They knew where they were supposed to be. So it was a quick come in, grab your basket, and go. It's time for Dyad reading. And they knew exactly when that was. I had spreadsheets, and then I have the Dyad reading partners. This was term 2. A lead reader, what his Lexile score was, the assisted reader, what his Lexile score was, and then what their difficulty range should be. I also kept record of who their previous partner was because I couldn't always remember. Didn't want to stick them with somebody twice. I wanted to make sure they had a good variety of partners to read with. So when you create your spreadsheet, make sure you record the lead reader, his Lexile score, the assisted reader, his Lexile score, and then the difficulty range. So you have a quick reference to see what is 2 to 4 levels above. When they come and say, we need a new book, Mrs. Brown, what are we going to read? You know exactly what level to look for, what Lexile level to look for. And then again, record previously assigned partners. I put together a folder, put in a binder that I could identify partnerships and quickly go through that as I'm replacing books. In student book bag, I would record, so I didn't give them the same book twice. They didn't like that. If I gave them the same book, we already had this one. Don't give me this one again. I didn't like this book, but you can keep records so that you can make sure that you're keeping a good variety and you can switch out books really quickly. Strategic partnering. A lot of you are familiar with this, but just to review, you assess your partners with a given Lexile score. So you have your Lexiles. You rank your students from highest level Lexile score all the way down to the lowest level. So you take your classroom list, high to low, you cut it at the middle score, the median score, and you take the highest score of the high group and the highest score of the low group, and you partner those 2 together. Now you got to look and see, these kids don't get along. These kids are going to be a problem if I put them together. So you got to be strategic, as long as we're close in the ranges, the differences between the students, we're going to be fine. But if you put the highest student with the lowest student, they're not going to have a good time. It's going to be a struggle for both of them. The high students are going to be frustrated. The low students are going to feel very overwhelmed and uncomfortable. So you want to make sure there's not a big gap between your students, but enough of a gap that you have a strong scaffold for that other student. So your high scoring student in the pair serves as a lead reader, while the low scoring student is the assisted reader. I never told my students, you're the high scoring student, you're the lowest. I never did that. They naturally take charge. Those strong readers naturally are comfortable with books. They naturally do the finger. Sometimes it's good if the lower reader uses his finger across the book. But I never told them who the lead reader was. I just let it all play out, and it always worked. Those strong students really are comfortable with books, and they take the lead in this. And if a lower scoring student is taking the lead, good for him. Or good for her. That's great to see that confidence building. So I don't recommend, a lot of teachers did tell them who the lead reader was and kind of coach them that way. I never did. I wasn't comfortable with that. I want everybody to think they're the best and the lead reader. So I let them just kind of play it out, and it worked really well. So here's an example of strategic partnering. Here you see the Lexile scores here ranked high to low. And then you cut this at Tran. That's the middle score. And so then you partner Miguel here with Tran, James with Michelle, so that you don't have a big gap between the students' Lexile levels, but there is a gap. And they're able to do that. So if you have any questions on strategic partnering, you could probably find it on AI, look it up, and get some more coaching on that. What if you don't have enough lead readers? We ran into this a lot in Texas. We have a lot of emerging bilinguals, is what we call them in Texas. I'm not sure what the current term is in Utah. It changes every couple of years. But we have a lot of emerging bilinguals. When I was a literacy coach in Bastrop, Texas, I had, they were classes where they put the Spanish-speaking students in a dual language immersion type of situation. And we did not have enough lead readers. And so sometimes those classrooms had maybe 3 or 4 students that were reading on grade level. So what we would do is, if we don't have enough strong readers, do we have enough to do triads? If you have enough that you have a third of your students that could serve as lead readers, that have enough strength to serve as lead readers, do triads, put the strong reader in the center of the dyad or the triad and have that student track. If you don't have enough to even do triads, we had that in a situation in a third grade classroom here in Texas. What we did is we couldn't get volunteers to come in. So it was a teacher, me, and 25 little Spanish speaking students who just couldn't do it. She had probably 3 or 4 great readers. So she made dyads or triads, depending, with those strong readers. And then she took a group of students onto the carpet and then she would do group choral reading with those students. And they all had a text and they all followed along. So you just have to see what's going to work for your population, but don't give up on it. There's always a way to make it work. And that is how we found to make it work. Those students in that emerging bilingual classroom did great that year. They showed so much growth. It was very impressive. And I'd love to see some research with emerging bilingual students with Dyad reading. There was a study in 2005, but I haven't seen one since. And I would love to see someone do a study with that. I wish I were in a position to do so, but I've been in administration most of my career and haven't had a chance to do it. Maybe when I retire, I can do that. But yeah, find a way that's going to work for you, whether it's dyads, whether it's triads, or whether it's some dyads and triads and then a small group with you at the carpet. So you can get one person to come in during that 15 minutes. You can probably find some support. These students did really well just working on their dyads and triads and then the small group. She really had some good classroom management and it worked well. And they did it all year and they made some great growth. So don't give up. Find a scenario that will work for your students and your population. So assessing textability level. At the end of the year proficiency, here's the first grade levels. I don't know that these have changed. I haven't. No, they are still about where we want to be. 2 to 4 grade levels above. I would take, for example, here's the top of the first grade level. 2 grade levels above starts at 520 for first grade. And then, up to 830 would be to 5th grade. So just keep 2 to 3 grade levels again. It's important that you're challenging them with grade level appropriate books. Keep them challenged, keep them 2 to 3 levels above. Whenever you get test scores back, bump up the levels because they're going to grow. They're going to grow 200, 300 Lexile levels during the year. If you're not bumping them up every time you see a new reading score, a new Lexile score, the challenge is going to disappear and they're not going to make the growth that you want them to make. So keep assessing, keep bumping up their challenge levels, and keep them in interesting texts. Changing partners during the year, making sure that I rotated them every, was it once a term or once a month? But I would rotate, I think it was once a term, I would rotate my partners. Give them different examples of prosody. Have them read with different people. See how other people read. See how other people will engage with different kinds of texts. The interest that other people have. It just really got the students excited about the texts that they're reading, the partnerships, being able to really have some expression in their reading. We see a lot of these struggling readers all of a sudden developing great prosody, great expression in their reading, and being excited about what's the next book we're going to read and talking about books they're reading. And it just creates this community of readers that are excited about books and excited about reading. I had to prepare, this is how you prepare your students. You have them sit side by side. They use one book. I think that's an area of confusion that each student's got to have their own book. No, you want to share a book. They read one book together. They sit side by side. They read aloud simultaneously. It's dual choral reading. The lead reader usually takes control and tracks with the finger, but somebody needs to be tracking with the finger. Again, if an assisted reader wants to do that, good for them. I would encourage that. But the lead reader usually takes control and does that. And they read together just 15 minutes a day. We had silent sustained reading 15 minutes a day, which I know Jennifer calls silent sustained staring. This is a much more productive. It's easier to see your students engaged. It's easier to see that active involvement. They're reading instead of just kind of pretending to be readers. I've seen some kids really good actors on trying to pretend to be readers. So this 15 minutes a day that would be spent on other things, it's even a good break. We did it right after recess. The kids were so excited to come after afternoon recess, pick up their books, go sit down with their partners, and they just got busy. A lot of times they were reading before the bell even rang. I had posted in my classroom the Dyad reading rules. And here's the rules. Share one book. Select your book carefully, something everybody agrees on, you both agree on, or Triad, all of you agree on that book. Sit side by side, one smooth finger across the text, two voices. We want to make sure they're both using their voices and both engaged. Eyes on words, not too fast, not too slow. We called the words that they didn't know crazy words. They would write those down so they didn't get stuck on them. Then they could just write down the word and move on. And then have fun. We want to make sure it's fun and engaging and everybody's having a good time. Scheduling tips, make sure you're doing it as part of a routine. If it's not part of your routine, it's not going to happen. So schedule the same time every day. It might be first thing in the morning, after first or second recess, after lunch. The students know when this is going to happen. It's going to happen every day at that same time. They know what they're supposed to do. They come in, they get their books. They're ready to go. They have them on their desk before they go to recess. Whatever works best for you. Plan for effective transitions. I don't need to tell you all about how to make transitions smooth. You've been doing this for years. Just make sure everybody knows what they're to do and they do it. Students know where they should read together. What are the rules? Do you have places where you can go? We don't want students wandering around the room every day trying to find their spot or fighting over spots. I just had them do it at their desks because it just saved a whole lot of heartache and headache and fights and disagreements. So they just did it at their desks. The way I had my classroom set up is I had pairs of desks. And then if they were doing group work, the front two would turn around and work with the back two. It just worked for our classroom. And then we were able to do small group stuff, partnership stuff. They were always set up for Dyad reading. If we had a challenging social studies text to read, they had a partner there ready to go with them. Decide what works for you, what works for your teaching style. But make sure your students know where they're going to do Dyad reading so it's not a battle and it doesn't waste transition time. What does the teacher do? A lot of times people would say, well, the kids are reading, I'm going to go sit at my desk and grade some papers. That's the worst thing to do. You need to be cruising the room always. When there's a police cruiser in the neighborhood, everybody's on task and doing what they're supposed to do. So cruise the room, listen to your students read, listen to what they're doing, listen to their prosody, help them follow the guidelines, make sure they're doing it. Listen to what they're saying about books. A lot of times people say, well, they got to keep reading, keep reading, keep reading. No, I want to hear them discuss their books. Have a conversation about what you're reading. Talk about what you just saw or what you just read or ask a question. I'd encourage that. It doesn't have to be just no stop reading. It can be discussing books. We all want to have great discussions about books. Encourage students to keep going. Showing students that Dyad reading is important to you. It's important to them. If you're sitting at your desk, it's not important to you. If you're cruising around, listening to them, talking about their books, seeing what they're reading, listen to them, it's important to you and they know that. And they're going to dedicate their efforts to it a little bit more. Tips for success. There's some things that you can run into that are challenges. Start at the lower end of the Lexile range and move higher as your readers progress. If you have some students that are struggling with a book, time to change out that book. Just make sure that the challenge is appropriate for your students, but make sure they're challenged. If a partnership's not working, don't be afraid to change it. If kids are not getting along, if they're fighting, if they don't have the same interests, just change it. You can make some changes and it's fun. You always run into a student who's absent. If you have a student that's chronically absent, put them in a trio so that their partners are not alone all the time. When you do have a student absent, put that regular partner with somebody who's reading nonfiction, because you can jump in the middle of a nonfiction book and be able to understand what's going on. If you jump in the middle of a fiction book, you're going to struggle with what's happening in the story. So if a partner's gone, just have them read with someone that's reading nonfiction, show them something interesting and new. If you have an odd number of students, create a triad, decide who they could be in a triad with, and place the assistant reader in the center between two lead readers, or put the lead reader in the center with two assistant readers on either side. If your population is predominantly below grade level, we talked about that a few minutes ago, create triads, but have higher expectations for behavior. Bring in volunteers or instructional aides if you can get those. You're a lucky teacher if you can get those. Work with small groups while Dyads are reading. Do small group core reading at the beginning of the year if you just don't have enough, and then move to triads and then do dyads during the course of the year. Just be flexible to meet the needs of your population. Okay, it's the same slide. Okay. Goodness. Positive talk. I know that there was a dyad reading study that students just didn't make much growth. And I wondered what happened. I wish I were a fly on the wall to see what was going on in that classroom. I wonder if the students had not a positive experience with that, if that's what happened. Because we saw so much growth throughout Utah. But sometimes if a teacher is not excited about dyad reading, if they're it's not an exciting time for the students, if they're not enjoying it, I think that can really impact their growth significantly. Do your students know why they're doing dyad reading? I constantly told my students, this is a way that's going to help you to be a stronger reader. It's going to help you build your vocabulary. I always let my students know, why is this important? Why are we working on this? Why are we doing this? And how is this going to benefit you? Encourage positive growth mindsets. Help them to know that they can become good readers, strong readers. A lot of students, they just get so discouraged with reading, they don't want to do it, they fight it. We all have heard that. The less they read, the more behind they get, that Matthew effect, where they just keep falling further behind. So we want to encourage students to know they can become strong readers, that this has worked for students all over the world. It's a good way to become a strong reader. Are your students recognizing their growth? Are you showing them how their Lexile scores are jumping? Our students got so excited to see their growth, to see those test results come back and see how much stronger readers, see that they're reading now on a 4th grade level and they're still in 3rd grade, or they're reading on a 5th grade level. It was so exciting to them to see that growth, and then to celebrate that growth with their parents and caregivers. Their parents were excited about it. We had so many parents be so excited about the growth that their students were making and how much more they were enjoying reading and how much more they wanted to get into books. That they were finally asking for books for Christmas, or they wanted a new book to read, or they wanted to read this graphic novel that their friend talked about, or the next book in the series. I had a lot of first books in series in their book bags, so that they'd read that first book and then they'd want to continue to read the next book. So as you're implementing this, think about, who are my lead readers? Is my population suited for dyad reading? Do I need to make some adjustments? When am I going to schedule this in my classroom? How's it going to work for me? When's going to be the best time? What are the procedures I'm going to have? I'm not going to make this transition go really smoothly. Will I use book boxes, book bags? What's going to work best in my classroom, my situation? Where am I going to let my students read? How am I going to arrange my classroom to make this work for my classroom and my students? What will my procedure chart look like? Create that chart. You can look at this slide for here. Create your own rules if you want to change some of those. And then why? What are your students' needs, and what are your goals for your students for this year? How many students do you have below grade level? I would love to see every class be on grade level at the end of the year, all of the students. I was so sad I lost that one to not quite make it, but she was very close. And then make sure you're maintaining that level of challenge. They increase Lexile levels by about 2 grade levels by mid-year. If you're not increasing that regularly, testing regularly, the challenge is going to disappear, and then they're not going to make as much growth. So make sure you're adjusting those. Assign new student partners at the end of each term, or whenever you decide. Provide them another model of fluent reading. Have some more friends to talk about books, and to be able to enjoy reading together. And then help your students to develop interest in various genres of literature. We also did the 40-book challenge in connection with our dyad reading, and had those charts where they read a certain amount of poetry, certain amount of fiction, nonfiction, mysteries, expose them to different kinds of literature and help them develop those interests, figure out what they like and what they enjoy reading, and then they'll read more at home. Make sure you review your students' progress with parents at conferences, discuss their home reading practices. Do they have some good time at home to read? How can you help your families to develop those reading opportunities? If you find that a student's not making good progress, meet with your literacy coach. I was a literacy coach here, and I loved it when my teachers would come and say, I've got this student just not doing well. What can we do? And then we'd run some diagnostic tests and do that drill down assessment. I think you still use that in Utah, the drill down. to figure out where we're running into some difficulties and then discuss assessments and interventions. If a student's not making growth, there's something going on. And it's up to us to find what it is that we can do to help that student to overcome those challenges. And always keep in mind, this is one piece of a strong literacy program. This is not the whole caboodle. We've got to have a full literacy program. We've got to focus on all of those great skills. But this is one piece that can be a quick strengthener for our students. Again, focus on vocabulary. Direct, explicit vocabulary instruction has been demonstrated to improve word learning, long-term comprehension, word recognition, to develop those vocabularies and those understanding of different words. So I would have my students write their words on the board, and then we would talk about those as we'd have breaks during the day. You can see some of these words here. Fleet was one. Fortifications. This is the third grade classroom, and we're reading fortifications and subterranean. So it was fun to see the words that they would come up with. Cheyenne, the person that wrote that on the board, I said, I go through and pronounce it with them and help them sound it out. And I said, the CH says sh in this case. And oh, I know that word. I didn't know that's how you spelled it. So you can see over here we have prohibiting, silversmith, chance, I can't see that one, ewers and pottingers. Somebody was reading something about ancient civilizations and ewers and pottingers. Have you ever heard those terms? A ewer is a vessel that has two handles, I believe. And a pottinger, I think, is a vase that pours water, or vice versa. I can't remember which one it is, but I didn't know those words either. So then I would be able to demonstrate to them, okay, I've never seen this word before, but how am I going to figure it out? And then I'd pull up the computer on the overhead projector, type it in to Google, and it would give me the pronunciation. Oh, we say pottingers. What in the world is a pottinger? And then it would give me the definition. So I show them how I problem solved words when I didn't know them, that I didn't just bypass them. I'd write them down and go look them up. So showing them how I problem solved a word that they didn't know. So systematic vocabulary instruction is important in closing that achievement gap for students at risk. It's essential for emerging bilinguals, making sure that we're supporting vocabulary in some way during the day for those words that they've written down is going to be really critical and important for really growing your students' strengths. So to sum up, why do we want to do Dyad reading? It provides intervention for struggling readers. It provides scaffolding for those students who struggle to read in a whole class setting. You have support for all these students, all in the same time in the same room reading text. It only requires 15 to 20 minutes a day. If you can get your transitions down, you can do it in 17 minutes and be ready to move on. There's limited expense. You can use existing classroom or school materials. You can do this without additional staff. If you can get additional staff, that's wonderful, but you can do it just all by yourself. Dyad reading has been found to be effective for English language learners or emerging bilinguals. Like I said, the study that I found was 2005. Hopefully there's more research out there. And I'd love to see someone take up this idea and do some research with our emerging bilinguals. It's got to be a great way to build their vocabulary, to build their word recognition, to just build their fluency, their ability to pronounce words. You can just see so many benefits for our emerging bilinguals. And then Dyad reading has been demonstrated in research to be effective for low-income students, for those students at risk. And we always want to have extra support and help for those students at risk. Additional things to consider: how can it support second language acquisition? Again, and then the importance of modeling, pronunciation, prosody for those students who are struggling readers or who are emerging bilinguals. And then think about future research in emerging bilinguals or students of different age groups, different classroom settings, different socioeconomic situations. There's a lot of areas that we can stretch and explore more about how to support these students with Dyad reading and how to help them to grow. Here's my LinkedIn page. I would love to have all of you be my friends on LinkedIn. My email address is here. I am available for questions. If you're running into difficulties implementing this, figuring it out, if you have questions about how to get everything set up, I love to communicate with people about Dyad reading, and I would be happy to hear from you at any time.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. That was awesome. The one thing I love about this is you did the research, but you also were the teacher as part of that research project. So like you have the implementation chops to go along with like the evidence base of it. And the kids grew 2 to 3 years in 1 year of instruction. And that's the gap closer that in 15 minutes a day is just so powerful. Thank you for sharing your expertise, your experience. The the ultimate benefit was what the kids got out of it, which was they were better readers and probably, learned to be good partners. That sometimes our kids have to work on that skill too. So if you guys want to stay connected with Dr. Brown, her LinkedIn there is again, you can also Lisa Brown is a common name. So like use that link when you go to find her. And that was the last of our series for the 2025-2026 school year. We thought we'd leave you with a practice that being at the end of the year, you can start preparing for next year, like Lexile your books. There's a app that I use that you can scan the barcode on the back and it gives you the Lexile. You can also just go online and type it in, like on Barnes& and Noble or Amazon, and they give Lexiles too. So that is your first step of a few when you go about doing this work. And then the kids come in, you get their data and you group them. And Lisa, I really appreciated the clarity of the Lexile bands. It's always a question people are like, what is 2 or more years above? And knowing how critical that challenge level is that we've got to get in that 2 years or higher sweet spot, that will make that a lot clearer for people. So thanks for giving that level of clarity. And Shannon, Jacqueline, Julie, Christy, if any of you have questions for Dr. Brown, we will take a few minutes. Otherwise, we will bless and release you back into the wild of the evening. Thanks, Jacqueline. Please do. Please share. We will send out the recording here shortly too, so you can share it with others so they can hear exactly what you heard and get the clarity they might need to be inspired to do a practice that really, when we did a pilot study after Lisa's study across the state, we did one down here in Washington County where I am today, and we had several teachers participate that were willing to try it and do it 4 days a week was our minimum. And they got 2 to 3 years of growth as well. And so it wasn't just this one setting. And this study is one of many studies that have shown putting kids in more challenging texts with scaffolding is how we can accelerate reading progress. So please go forth and share. When we, as Reading League Utah, one of our main missions is evidence-aligned practices that support students. And this is one that there's plenty of research. There's dozens of studies on putting kids in more challenging texts with scaffolding that this works. And it doesn't take a lot. And I will tell you, teachers will say it's their favorite part of the day for the kids. Like the kids love it. That makes the teachers love it because they come in excited to do it. And it's a great after recess, brings them back down. Like, okay, we're reading now. So thanks, Dr. Brown. What a pleasure. Appreciate you. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.